We're going to get into a really powerful story today. It's all about friendship, but it's also about its limits. It really makes you think about what it means to be a good friend and what you should expect in return. So let's dive in.
Okay, so at the very center of this whole thing is a guy named Hans. And if there's one thing you need to know about Hans, it's that he is an incredibly loyal friend. I mean, he's the kind of person who believes you should always, always be there to help, no matter what. And as you're about to see, that idea is really going to be put to the test.
So, to really get who Hans is, you kind of have to see him in action. This first part of the story really just shows you how far he's willing to go. And it paints this incredible picture of just selfless, hard work. Picture this. Every single morning, Hans is out in his friends the Miller's garden. And let me tell you, this isn't easy stuff. We're talking about working harder than he's ever worked, carrying these heavy tools, lugging watering cans around from sunrise to sunset. To him, this wasn't just gardening. He was literally pouring all of his energy into their friendship. And you might be wondering, why? Why would he do all this? Well, this was his inner monologue. Whenever he felt tired, he'd just remind himself, I am helping my friend. In his mind, all this hard work, all this sweat, that was the ultimate way to show you care. But you know how it is. True loyalty really gets tested when things get tough. And this next part of the story, well, it's about one really nasty, rainy day that starts to show the cracks in this friendship. So one morning, the weather is just miserable. It is pouring down rain, but does that stop Hans? Of course not. He shows up to the garden right on schedule, completely soaked, with his shoes just caked in mud. But he's there, and he's ready to get to work. So what does the Miller say? Does he say, wow, Hans, thanks for coming out in this awful weather? Nope, not even close. Instead, he basically tells him he's doing it wrong. You were too careful. See what happened there? The focus isn't on Hans being cold and wet. It's all about the Miller's flowers. It's a huge red flag. And this just does it all, doesn't it? While the Miller is going on about the flowers, poor Hans is literally standing there, physically shivering from the cold. He's miserable, but his so-called friend either doesn't notice or just doesn't care. But here's the kicker. Look at Hans's response. Even while he's shaking, his loyalty is rock solid. He just says, yes, sir, and thinks to himself, you know what? He's right. I need to do better. His first instinct, always, is to trust the Miller and just try harder. Okay, so as the day goes on, all this hard work in this horrible weather, it really starts to get to Hans. And it leads him to ask for something super simple and totally reasonable. I mean, after hours and hours of hauling those heavy water cans back and forth, Hans is in real pain. His back is killing him. He's just completely worn out from the nonstop work. So he goes up to the Miller and he asks this really simple question. Sir, may I rest for a little while? My back hurts. I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? The guy has been working his tail off all day. Now, the Miller's response to this totally reasonable request, this is the real turning point of the whole story. This is where we see exactly who we're dealing with. The answer is just instant and sharp. No. He doesn't even think about it. He completely dismisses Hans's pain. To the Miller, his friend being in pain is just an inconvenience. It's getting in the way of the work. But then, he does something really sneaky. He dangles this little promise of a reward. But listen to the words, when the garden is perfect. See, that's not a gift. That's a leash. He's using it to control Hans, to make him forget about his aching back and focus on some prize he might never even get. And you know what? It works. Between the promise and his own loyal nature, Hans just quietly nods, and he gets back to it. He pushes through the pain in his back and works all afternoon, with aching hands and his clothes still soaking wet. So after this incredibly long, hard day, Hans finally gets a moment to himself. And in that quiet, a brand new feeling starts to grow. The day is finally over. Hans goes down and sits by the river, all alone. And for what feels like the very first time, he's not just working or doing, he's actually thinking about the Miller, thinking about their friendship. And this is it. This is the moment. A question just pops into his head, one he's never, ever let himself ask before. I am a good friend, but does he truly care about me? This isn't just a little doubt. It's the beginning of Hans actually starting to value himself. And that's what this whole story leaves us with. It's a question for you, really. After seeing everything Hans went through, does a real friend make you suffer just for their own benefit? It's something to think about, right? Where's the line between being a loyal friend and just being used? Thanks for tuning in for this one.